This is a CBC podcast. It's fall, time to return to campus. The sophomore season of the award-winning CBC podcast continues, with new episodes about that time of life where everything changes. Hear more first-person stories about the pressures to succeed, the threat of failure, and the adventures of growing up. Go to cbc.ca/campus to subscribe to the podcast, get involved on social media, and more.
Hello, I am Chiwetelu.
And I am Trevor Dineen.
And you, my lucky listener, are listening to the very first episode of Now or Never.
Now, this show is so brand spanking new. We're talking still in the package. The tag is still dangling off of it.
Yes, take the plastic off, let it breathe, because this is a show about Canadians who are on a personal mission to make something happen.
Now, I bet you know someone like this, someone just absolutely determined to make a real change, no matter how risky it may be or even how ridiculous it might seem. They take a deep breath, they gather up this courage they didn't even know they had, and they just dive right in.
And it could be something big and bold, like making $1 million and retiring before you're 29. Or
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Or, something so small like persuading your family to just put away their cell phones at dinner.
Either way, we are going to leap into the action with them. And sometimes things will go amazingly right, and sometimes
they're going to go sideways.
But you know what? The journey is amazing. And when it does work, it's magic.
Now, if you want to tell us about your mission to make a change.
Yeah, or if you just kind of want to cyber stalk us, find out who we are, what we look like, you can visit our website.
Yeah, it's cbc.ca/now or never. And I guarantee you, when you look at some of the photos, you'll think, wow, they're a couple of nice looking realtors. We're not. I guarantee we are hosts.
But I will happily take 5% on the next sale of your house. Happy to do it. Now, this show isn't about realtors, but it is about people making things happen and maybe motivating you to do something in your life. And with this particular episode, we are talking back to our bullies. We are stepping up to those who have bullied us before.
I felt like David and Goliath, like we're just a single mom and her son fighting like an entire institution, but I persisted.
Most bullies aren't actually sadistic. They're just callously goal-oriented. And if you don't consider what's in it for somebody, why is somebody doing this, your interventions are not likely to succeed.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
Let's start with that guy right there, Donald J. Trump.
Yes, the man who could be elected president of the United States in a matter of days.
And I went to visit a guy in Edmonton who takes what Trump says extremely personally.
Well, he's just a big bully. Like, he's the definition of bullying. He's bullying an entire country. And he's bullying the descendants of people from that country. He is taking bully to the extreme.
That's Diego Salrena. Now, he's a construction worker who said to himself, I'm going to stand up to this bully. And he did it in a very unusual way.
What did he do?
Well, he climbed to the top of Vancouver's Trump Tower to plant a Mexican flag right at the very top.
Bueno, mientras todo esto ocurre con Donald Trump allá en Vancouver, Canadá, Diego Reina, un obrero mexicano de Chiapas.
Tower in downtown Vancouver.
It was put there by construction workers as a message to the Republican presidential candidate on who's really building his empire.
Diego Reina y compró una bandera mexicana en Vancouver.
Diego Reina is a Mexican-Canadian construction worker, and on Saturday, he took to the very top of the Trump Tower to share his message.
Yeah, Diego was all over the news this spring. Now, he's basically Ocean 11 his way all the way to the top of this building.
Minus 10 people.
Minus 10 people and a gymnast.
Yeah.
Now, I had a chance to talk to him in depth about that experience and what kind of drove him to just make his way all the way up those flights of stairs. I'm in a stairwell right now with Diego, and we're about to go up some stairs here, nowhere near as many flights as you did in Vancouver. How many flights was it in Vancouver?
It was 67 floors.
The entire way?
Yeah, well, the elevator took me to the first 20, so I had to walk the remaining 47.
So you wake up in the morning, you decide you're going to disguise yourself as a construction worker, sneak onto a site, climb up 47 floors worth of stairs to hang a flag on the top of a building with his name on it, which is basically one giant big middle finger to Donald Trump. He's probably seen this. Why you then? Why did you decide to do it?
Well, let's say Donald Trump launches his campaign, and what he does is he grabs every people in my country, everybody, and puts them on a punching bag. And then every morning he hits it 50 times. And then again for lunch, and right before he goes to sleep, he does it again. So this includes everybody I grew up with, my teachers that I admire, the people that taught me and grew up with me, giving me a good example, my parents, my grandparents, my children, everyone I've ever loved and everyone I've ever looked up to in my country. So I am put in that punching bag, and I am punched. Every time the media replays his messages, I get punched. So I either do something or keep getting punched.
So now you're in the building, basically, and you're starting to climb these stairs. And you weren't just you had to carry all your tools, correct?
Yes, well, I had to pretend that I was doing some work. So I carry some drills and wrenches and some chargers and batteries and a laser, which is like the staple of inspection work. So I was pretending to be one of the inspectors. It was very hard watching my parents grow together, raising us with so much struggle. My dad would come and he would work really hard. He was working at a mine and then as a taxi driver right after. And he would come and his hands were really sore. And my mom would also work 3 jobs at a field and as a teacher. And then my dad would massage her feet with his sore hands. So I watched the infinite love and respect that they had for each other. And this is really what enrages me, that you're judging some of the best people in the world without even knowing them.
Did you come across any people on your way up, like any moments where you were like, uh-oh, this is not going to work?
Well, there came a time in which I was running a little out of breath. So I decided to stop, to give my legs a break. And also, as we're going up the stairs, I heard voices on the coming floor. So I thought, well, maybe I should wait so that I don't run into these people, because maybe they are real inspectors. And I'm there trying to catch my breath, and I hear someone coming behind me on the same flight of stairs. So I'm like, what do I do? So we went into one of the floors, and then I went into one of the units. And as soon as I opened the door, you see this view and all these luxury items. The units are beautiful, are top-of-the-art luxury buildings. And that's what reinforced the purpose of going there to begin with. This beautiful building is a result of everyone's cooperation. I have many friends that work on that building, Muslims, women, Mexicans, from all walks of life. From the guy that cleans the floor to the architect. We are all working together. So when I looked at the window and I looked these beautiful apartments, I was more determined. I definitely have to make it to the top. I have to send this message. When I started climbing up again, they were gone, and I just started sprinting again and made it to the top. And as I look around, it was probably just me, but I even felt like the building was swaying a little bit, like it moved like a couple inches from side to side as the wind was coming. So that was the first thing I noticed. And then it was the view. It was picture perfect. So I got over it, caught my breath, and then started looking as per where to hang the flag. I had no idea. I had one zip tie with me, so I had to use one of my shoelaces. I was just on my way down when I just had a feeling, and I told my friend, let's just take a picture just so that someone believes me it was me, maybe. So I took the picture, and we were on our way down again when I decided to make a video.
So we are at the top of the Trump Tower in downtown Vancouver, and you won't believe what we have here. Take a look at the beautiful city. And then we have the water and the mountains, and oh, what's that? A Mexican flag. And why is that? Because it's Mexicans that built this tower. From the drywall to the concrete finish to the steel.
I had this feeling this could really reach Donald Trump's ears.
What went through your brain? Like, what were you thinking when you stood there and you're zip tying up the flag? What was going through your mind at that point?
So it felt very surreal. Like, it felt like I was still sleeping, dreaming. But putting the flag, it was like putting the last nail on something huge, symbolically.
Do you ever worry that his stance would basically be, well, he's just proven me correct because I said Mexicans are criminals. He broke onto a job site and did a criminal thing by actually going up onto a job site that he was not allowed to be in order to do this.
Well, as a good Canadian, first of all, I would apologize for the inconvenience, and I would apologize for disagreeing with him, and then I would validate his statement. Yes, you are correct. Trespassing is a crime. But sometimes going against the law and doing what is right is not often the same thing. This is a crime that had to happen.
Mm-hmm. When you got outside the tower, did you go try and walk around to see if you could see the flag?
I got into my car because I was running out of time on the parkimeter. Actually, when I opened my car,
hold on a second. I love that you were like still very. You just did this whole thing. You went and snuck into a building. You went to the top without anyone knowing. You kind of lied to a few people, but then you were still concerned that you might go over your parking meter time.
Well, I don't want to get a parking ticket in Vancouver. That's very important.
That's awesome.
So I remember putting the coins, and he gave me 30 minutes. And when I came back, I was like on the last minute, like literally on the like I could see the second counter. So I get into my car and I drove out. And as I drove, I opened my sunroof and I looked up and I saw the flag at the top. And it just, like, the image of it, it looks so pretty. Like, the building looks pretty. It was a clear blue sky and the flag could be seen from the streets. I went back home and I posted the picture. I posted it and I made it public. And it was the first time I used social media to make a political statement.
That's such an incredible story.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to imagine the amount of rage that would carry me up 47 flights of stairs.
Well, we actually have video of Diego climbing to the top of the tower. You can actually go to our Facebook page and take a look at it. It's facebook.com/CBC Now or Never.
Because now or never, we are all about bringing you stories of people just like Diego who are on a mission to change things. And this show isn't just about other people's stories. It's about your experiences, too.
And maybe you're dealing with a bully in your workplace, or you're trying to coach your kid to stand up to someone who's just teasing them incessantly at school. You're not going to go climb to the top of the school and plant a flag like Diego did, but he has this idea of what you could do.
Remember one thing, when somebody talks trash about someone, there's always something you can do by peaceful means, right? Like, we don't want to validate the bully by acting the way he does. So there's always something we can do. In my case, the only thing I could do at that point was the Mexican flag on top of the Trump Tower in Vancouver. But we have to think, there's always something you could do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You heard Diego say there, at that point, that was all he could do was hang that Mexican flag at the top of the Trump Tower.
Which was a lot.
A huge thing to do.
Yeah.
But as time went on, he realized, you know what, there's actually more I can do. And he came up with this creative, interesting concept that involves a Donald Trump mask and, an alternate universe.
An alternate universe where we go to solve all our problems.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to get there.
Okay.
A little bit later on Now or Never. I'm again Trevor Dineen.
And I'm Ifi Chiwetelu. So we've heard from someone who's felt bullied by a political leader. But how about being bullied by anonymous faces on Twitter?
Oh, the worst kind.
Right? And this is the situation that Leslie Jones is in. Leslie Jones is a stand-up comedian. She's an actress. She's been on Saturday Night Live for the last couple seasons.
Ghostbusters?
Yes, which widely received a lot of harassment just for the fact that it was an entire cast of women remaking a movie that used to be an entire cast of men. And she is a Black woman. And that seems to be the reason for the majority of the attacks and the things that people are saying to her.
What's scary about the whole thing is that the insults didn't hurt me. Unfortunately, I'm used to the insults. That's unfortunate. But what scared me was the injustice of a gang of people jumping against you for such a sick cause. Just like everybody has an opinion and it all comes at you at one time. And it's so mean. Like, it's so gross and mean and unnecessary.
And that's truly what happened, was that it was just this almost organized attack on her for just daring to be Black woman and creative in a public way, which I very much personally connect to because I also do stand-up comedy. I also happen to be a Black woman. And I also auditioned for Ghostbusters. So there's so much there that I just felt really personally connected to. I didn't audition for Ghostbusters. But jokes aside, I do think it was very interesting for her to just note that it wasn't necessarily the targeted words, which she's used to, but it was sort of the way that it was coming at her. And she decided to handle that in a really interesting way.
Yeah, I'm not no robot that sits behind a Twitter thing and tweets out. I'm a real person. Yeah. I got a Twitter account. And yes, if you call me a name, I'm going to call you a name back. So if you tweet me thinking that I'm the only one that's going to get it, I retweet it so all my followers can see it and get on your punk.
And that's exactly what she did. Not only did she sort of retweet and make these anonymous people very visible and also responded to some of this, she also reached out to the CEO of Twitter and had a conversation about security on these platforms.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And she was successful in being able to get several Twitter accounts banned. But I think the interesting thing was in her making these attacks more visible and more well-known and speaking about them in interviews, it actually took it to a whole new level. Her personal computer was hacked, and a lot of information was leaked on her personal website. Her social security information was on there, nude photos.
It's just so vicious when you see attacks like this done online, especially because I think a lot of the people that do these attacks or say these things online to people, they don't think at all about there's another person on the end of that.
Yeah, I think they were trying to strip her away both physically and metaphorically of everything by making her as vulnerable as you can. And it still didn't work. She even took to the Emmy stage to challenge the idea of security when she entered in a segment where they were talking about the accountants who sort of audit the Emmys, were talking about the security that they put around the whole Emmy nomination process. And she came up and had a few words to say to them.
Y'all over here using your skills to protect best voiceover in a French sitcom? Meanwhile, I'm butt naked on CNN. I just wanted to feel beautiful, y'all. Can a sister feel beautiful? Come on, let's go.
I love that clip so much. She is incredibly resilient in that she refuses to stay off. She continues to come back. And I think there's such a big lesson in that about what you do when you're being attacked and when you're being bullied. There's so many things about her that are unapologetic. And I think even her reaction to this continues that sort of audacity to exist and be great.
I hope that one day you look at me the way you look at Leslie Jones.
Oh my God. It would never happen. I mean, first of all, you'd have to become a Black woman. You'd have to start doing stand-up. There's so many steps for you.
And I'm going to make it happen now or never.
I'm Ify. I love Leslie Jones. Chiwetelu.
And I'm Trevor Dineen, and this is Now or Never on CBC Radio 1.
So we absolutely cannot do a whole episode on bullying without talking about the place where they are raised and groomed. High school. School.
Vanya Karam and her son Winston, they have got this bullying story from Ottawa that has repercussions for school kids basically all across Canada. Winston is now 16 years old, but his story started a few years ago when he was in grade 7. So you had two classmates who started as friends, but then they turned into bullies? What did they do?
They started putting me in chokeholds is what I first noticed, and like push me in the hallways, push me into lockers, call me the N-word, call me the A-word, call me like terrible names like dickhead and those sort of names. And on one incident, they took my head and they smashed it right into a water fountain.
Whoa.
which was, I think, one of the biggest ones for me. At one point, the bullies were targeting how I laughed and how I talked, and literally that whole rest of the year, one of my goals for that year, which is really, it's not a good goal at all, but one of my goals was to change how I laugh and how I talk so that they wouldn't be able to make fun of me on it. And I realize now that that's not, you shouldn't have to do that.
Was there ever a moment where it just kind of pushed you too far?
I was in a English class, and me and the two bullies were sitting all next to each other, and one of them had leaned over the other's shoulder and just whispered into my ear the N-word out of nowhere just during class, just to get me riled up. And she said it pretty loudly, and almost the whole class really noticed that had happened. And his intention to get me riled up definitely did work, and I looked right back at him and I told him to F off. At that time, the teacher then looked at me and had told me to go straight to the office, and I had went to the office and told the vice principal about what had happened. And she had said that I shouldn't do that and that I need to get a detention for me saying the F off because it disturbed the class.
You actually had to serve detention for that?
Yeah.
So Vanya, what's it like as a mom, waiting to kind of get through the day to find out whether or not, he was bullied again, whether or not something happened?
It's pretty gut-wrenching, the fact that he stopped laughing. I only noticed that much, much later because there was just so much going on. But when I really look back on it all, I would say because his laugh never actually quite returned to normal, he lost the original laugh that he had. That really tore me apart as a mom.
At what point during all of this did you decide enough's enough? I gotta step in here?
I started sending the emails kind of saying he's being targeted. And then when that wasn't working anymore, there was a lot of in-person meetings with various school officials, and in particular the principal. So that went on throughout the year and nothing worked. They refused even to acknowledge that there was any bullying going on. So ultimately, I felt the school board and its staff had to be held to account, and that they had not fulfilled their duty of care to Winston, and that they were negligent. And so I took them to court. Winston and I did.
So when you first started this whole process of going to trial, because we'll get to the end point in a little bit, but in the beginning, was it daunting just the thought of taking them to trial? The school board, that's a huge step.
I felt like David and Goliath, we're just a single mom and her son fighting an entire institution, 2 law firms, 2 lawyers. But I persisted.
What made you persist? What made you dig in your heels and say, no, I'm not moving?
Because they continued to deny that he was ever bullied and that they had done anything wrong.
Winston, what was it like for you? You sat through this trial and you had to listen to teachers and principals go up on the stand. What was it like for you sitting there?
I could say how it felt for me to be on the stand.
Yeah.
I more remember cross-examination where their lawyer is trying to tell me how that school year went when they didn't even go through that school year. And that was the biggest thing. It was just that whole time I just wanted to tell them you weren't there, how should you know?
What was the final ruling?
In the end, ultimately we did win. The school board was found negligent in not responding to Winston's complaints of bullying.
What was the words that the judge said?
He basically said, "I believe you, Winston, and this should never have happened."
When my mom came home and told me that we had won the case, I just had I had no words for it. It was just we actually won. This judge believed me that it happened, that I was bullied.
That set a huge precedent, didn't it?
That set a huge precedent, which I didn't know we were setting. So basically what that means is that all schools now have a duty of care to respond to complaints of bullying take action and protect students from harm that comes to them as a result of bullying. And if they do not, they can be found negligent and financially liable. And I guess now that this has been set in civil law, the next step, hopefully, is that criminal law comes into effect, which would mean even criminal charges if, for example, a student commits suicide because a school failed to respond. And I hope that that eventually happens as well.
So now that this whole trial's done and it's behind you, what are you hearing from people online about this?
I've actually been blown away by the response. Here in Ottawa, there was a huge response from the community. One business, actually, the Wellington Diner, even offered Winston a job, and he's now working there. I also heard from the York Region Anti-Bullying Coalition, a group in Australia, a group in the UK, all of whom were curious about the case and wanted to talk to us about it.
So do you have any advice to parents out there right now who might have a child that is being bullied?
I do, actually. So looking back on it, I actually regret giving the school authorities any credibility at all. I think you should always believe your kids. So that's one. And then two, I mean, getting him healed took years. There was a poem that he wrote during that school year talking about how his dreams were starting to fade. And I really felt like he had kind of wasn't looking to the future. So what I did to kind of try to heal him is encouraged him to look forward. So that's another advice, is like try to get them out of that headspace, that negative space they're in, and looking forward.
My advice to like a person being bullied would probably be when it initially starts, the best thing to do is confront the people who are bullying you and try to solve it yourself. But if they're really targeting you, kind of like my situation, I would immediately go to a person that you can really trust, dear to you, a teacher that you can really trust, a parent that you can really trust, a friend that you could really trust, and tell them what's happening and share what's happening so that you can get other people in action right away so that it can be fought right away.
Winston, thank you very much for taking the time to just tell us about this whole journey you've been on.
No problem.
And Vanya, thanks so much again today. Good luck with the rest of the school year, Winston.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
That was Vanya Karam and her son Winston. Now, they sued the school board for negligence and not taking her son's bullying complaints seriously, and they won. Now, they were awarded $3,000 at the end of all this. 4 years of going to trial, $3,000. She spent $65,000 of her own money throughout that entire time period.
I feel like that's the price of sort of validating an experience for her. And she must be so tenacious to continue that. And I think that's something that she's passed on to her son.
I think one of the worst parts about it, when I heard the story, they still haven't received an apology of any kind from the school board, from the principal, or from the guidance counselor.
You're listening to the debut episode of Now or Never on CBC Radio 1. I am Chiwetelu.
And I am Trevor Dineen. This show is all about Canadians who are on a mission to make a real change, not that fake change that people like to do.
But it is about you, about what's bugging you in your life and what you might need to do to turn things around.
So far on the show, we've spent time with a few different people who are taking on their bullies in some very surprising ways.
Yeah, whether it's climbing up a skyscraper to send a message on social media.
Or as you just heard, going to court in order to do battle against a school board to stand up for your son.
Yeah, if you have taken on a bully in your own life.
We want your stories and your ideas too.
Because we are trying to assemble the master list, 101 ways to stand up to a bully.
Now, we may not get to 101. If we don't, it means we failed as a nation.
Yeah, you failed us is what it means.
I think that's what it means. So if you've dealt with a bully successfully or even unsuccessfully, unfortunately, email us, call us, share your ideas with us on Facebook, or you can email us nowornever@cbc.ca.
And our Facebook page is CBC Now or Never. So, Trevor, I want to introduce you to a woman who recently turned the tables on her bullies.
Okay.
Her name is Mary Smith, and she grew up in a small town in Cape Breton, and she was so badly bullied years ago that it changed the entire course of her life. And it's still something that affects her today. You can hear it in her voice when she talks about it.
There was 5 of us in my family. Our parents were drinking a lot, and I think they targeted our family. We were easy targets because we didn't really have much. I was only very, very small, but I was also shy, and they kind of played on that. The bullies used to throw things at me while I'd be sitting in the classroom. You'd get a lunch can thrown on the bus at you, or they'd take your cap and throw it in the mud, or your mittens, and they'd call you names, like hurting names.
Even if it just happened one time. But for Mary, it was kind of an ongoing thing. It started when she was about grade 2, and even when she changed schools, it continued all the way to grade 8. She remembers vividly the day that she decided that she'd had enough.
There was an incident that just was the teacher stepped out of the classroom or something at the time. It was in history class, and stepped out, and they were throwing things and, like plugging their nose or whatever, and it was hard. And I just walked out into the hall of the class, and I said, this is it. I'm out of here. I called my mom, and she came pick me up, and that was it.
In what ways would you say that it impacted you?
My biggest problem was my bullying. I felt for me was for my self-esteem. Jobs, the doors were not open for me. A lot of places require your grade 12. Even not only in that in school, but, to be able to join in on some conversations and knowledge and keep it up, to be involved.
Yeah. So what was it that made you decide to go back to school?
Like I say, I was facing challenges with job careers. I go online looking for jobs in grade 12. So I thought, well, here you go, Mary. Let's try her. Go get your grade 12, and maybe some doors will open for me.
How old were you when you decided to go back?
So I guess I was 53.
And how old were your kids when you decided to go back?
My son was 14. He's 16 now. And my oldest, I have 3 others. They're in their 20s and 30s.
Were they any motivation for you to go back to school?
Yes, most definitely. They kept telling me, Mom, you can do this. You're smart. Don't put yourself down. You can get it. And then I said, well, my son's 14, so maybe I can help him with some schoolwork because he was struggling. And I said, well, I'm going to have to do this algebra and try to understand this.
So would you both bring out your homework and work on that together?
He got a kick out of it. He even, like I said, he gave me a big hug, and he said, Mom, I'm so proud of you for doing this. And that even made me want it more.
And so you got your high school diploma in June, this past June. What were you thinking as you were going across the stage and they announced that you were on the dean's list and you were finally getting your high school diploma?
I was thinking, look what I did. I did it. And I'm so proud of myself for continuing on and making that first step in the doorway. Like, even yet when I talk about it, it brings tears to my eyes because I'm just so proud of myself for sticking to it and doing it. The girl that was tormenting me, I got an email here, not an email, a friend request on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And, I was talking to my husband over that. Actually, today we were just talking about that. He said, I wonder if you had have accepted what would have been done or said.
So you didn't accept the friend request?
No, I didn't. I'm still thinking about it. It's still on there. It's pending.
Yeah. I think a lot of us have people like that in our lives who are pending, where we're like, I don't know if I want to open this door again.
I thought about that too. Maybe if I had stuck in school and said, look, police, you're not going to get the best of me, I should have. But at that time, being a young teenager, I just couldn't deal with it then.
Mm-hmm. Do you think your life would be different now if you had stuck?
Oh, I most definitely think it would. I had a lot of dreams. I remember what I wanted to be, and I wanted to be a school teacher. I wanted to be actually a kindergarten teacher or a primary teacher.
What are your dreams now?
Well, my dreams now is to at least find a secure job that I'm not killing my back with right now. I'm doing housekeeping for too many years, and my body is starting to feel it. and I'd like to find something that is not as hard on my body.
You mentioned your son is 16 now?
Yes.
Is he around? Would he be open to answering a question or two?
Sure. Kyle?
Yeah.
Would you like to answer a question for the lady here, please?
Sure.
Hi, Kyle.
How are you?
Good. My name is Ify, calling from CBC. And I was just speaking with your mom about her going back to school and graduating. And she mentioned that you were a big part of that.
I kind of figured. I mean, me and my mother have a good bond. You know, she's someone who I can always talk to, and I greatly appreciate her for that.
Yeah.
I knew that she went years with this on her mind, you know, am I good enough and whatnot, and it's great to look at her and say, you know, you proved yourself wrong.
Yeah. Has she ever talked to you about the bullying that she dealt with when she was younger?
She never really went in depth about it, but I had heard some stories about it, and it didn't sound like she deserved it. It wasn't right. Everybody deserves a right to an education. Mm-hmm. It upsets me to know that, you know, like people, including my mother, sometimes don't get the education that they want or what they deserve because of other people being as inconsiderate as, you know, like as in my mother's case.
With your mom's experience, what has she taught you about dealing with bullies?
Well, basically what she told me was just, you know, you're better than that. You know, they're not comfortable about themselves that they have to make fun of other people. Basically what she told me. And, you know, every time I was bullied, she just sat there with me, let me talk, and till I felt better. And she just said, keep my head up. And, well, that's what I did.
I have to say your mother, just in the little time that I've spoken with her, she sounds like an incredibly warm and caring person. So I hope you realize how special a mom you have.
Oh, trust me, I know.
I'd love to talk with her again.
Here she is.
Hello.
You have such a good kid.
Yes, you know, actually that's something that my husband and I both have been told that we did, whatever it was we done it right because our children are very mannerly and I'm very proud of them.
If you could go back to that day in class when you walked out, what would you say to 16-year-old Mary?
I would have said, Mary, don't listen to them. Stay. You're better than that. Keep going. And I would have loved to have stood up in front of the class and explained to them that I should have the right to have the education you're getting without being picked on.
That's a great message, and I think it's great that you've passed that on to your kids.
Like I say, it's better late than never.
Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Well, I thank you very much.
What an absolutely sweet-sounding woman.
Right?
Like, unbelievable. You spend so much time in life and you hear about the pride that parents have in their children. And then you hear the way her son, at 16 years old, talks about her. And he talks with such a sense of reverence and such a sense of just absolute pride in who she is and all the things she's overcome and what she's instilled in him. And I just loved hearing that part of it.
I was listening to that and I was a little envious.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all need a Mary Smith inspiration in our lives. Is it weird that she reminded me of a Beyonce lyric?
Which one?
Beyonce says, "The best revenge is your paper." And as she was saying she got her diploma, I was like, yeah, it was. It was your best revenge.
I like that.
Mary Smith.
Beyonce
of Cape Breton.
Always stay gracious. Best revenge is your paper.
So earlier I was telling you about Diego Salrena. Now, he was the Canadian gentleman who climbed the Trump Tower in Vancouver, and he actually went and planted the Mexican flag right at the very top of it.
Yeah, which is a really interesting way, I think, to call out a bully. I don't know how many of us are going to take ladders and walk residential streets looking for houses to climb to the top of.
Spider-Man our way all the way up to the top. But now he's got this new way of taking on Trump, though. It has nothing to do with buildings at all. It's a little different. It's out there. It's kind of like performance art, I guess you could call it.
I love the way his mind works. He's like, I'm going to scale a building, and then next, I guess, an art project.
Mm-hmm. You see, what happened is I went to Edmonton, and I got to tag along as he did his latest response to Trump and all the bullying he feels that his family and his culture has been subjected to. Now, when I got there, he was getting into character, and he had on these gray pants. He had these suspenders, and then he pulled out this mask. And we're talking like one of the creepiest looking masks you've ever seen.
Well, it has very Scandinavian features. So it has the nice blonde hair and the pink skin. And it looks a little orange.
And then the mouth is wide open. And he pulls it out, and he proceeds to put it on. Now say something as Donald Trump.
Well, it's me, like I am Donald Trump. So everything I say, it's as me.
What would you like the people of Canada to know?
I would like them to know that you have a great country and that we are very proud to share a border with you. And back at home, in my parallel universe, Canadians and Americans are very good friends.
Is your hair real?
Well, in my universe, every time you commit an act of kindness, you get a blonde hair. So mine is completely blonde because I've been kind my whole life.
I need to know about this parallel universe because it makes not too much sense to me right now.
He pictures a Donald Trump with all of this money, all of this power, but it's a Donald Trump that actually goes out and does good deeds. He's out there apologizing. He's out there trying to make people happy and smile.
Wow. How do people react?
I wasn't certain what the reactions were going to be from people on the street when he did dress up like that. It was amazing how many different reactions there were. All right, I think it's time for you and I to go out and perform some good deeds. How are you feeling?
Absolutely. Let's go show some kindness.
Well, we just came around this corner here, and there's this giant courtyard here in Edmonton. There's all these tables with umbrellas.
So I'm going to go clean those tables because it seems like there has some food stains in it. So let's just get them very clean for the next client. And there's one more here.
What were you guys thinking when you walked past and saw what you just saw?
It's funny for me, actually.
What do you see when you see that?
A suffering guy.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, if you're from Egypt, do you have Muslim friends in Egypt?
Yes, a lot of them.
That is wonderful. Most of my friends are Muslims too, and I really like them. We have so many things in common.
If that's Donald Trump, he's fired.
Is there anything I can do to maybe change your opinion of myself?
The only thing you could do to change my opinion of you is to absolutely say not a single word anymore for the next 20 years.
What do you think when you see someone dress up like Donald Trump doing good deeds?
Pretty silly.
Why is it silly?
Just doesn't look realistic, and I'm not sure what the point is. Yeah.
You've been watching and sitting here, kind of seeing what's been going on.
Snapchat.
Are you really?
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's completely okay.
It's hilarious.
What have you been thinking when you've been watching this?
I was like, doing God's work, washing tails, you know?
Yeah?
Are you the actual Donald Trump? Because your twin down in the States is doing awful things.
From what we've gathered from people are either saying that it's great, they're seeing Donald Trump doing some fun things, but then a lot of people are saying they have no idea what it is you're doing or why it is you're doing it. How does that make you feel when you hear people that have no clue what's happening?
It's kind of part of the trick, I would like to think. Like they are very confused and then they're not sure what to do, they're not sure what it is. And when they ask me to take off the mask, I always tell them it's not a mask, I'm Donald Trump. And what happens is that when they get home, sometimes they Google it, they search it, and then my profile comes up. I rather leave that little doubt on their mind sometimes, and then they will think about it.
What did you think about that?
You know what? I feel like I get it now. And I feel like I get it because I've had moments where I've seen some stuff happening in the world, even just taking in daily local news and having that moment of being like, I wish it was the opposite. I wish this was anything but this. I wish if I could leave this world for a moment because it seems too crazy.
And go to a parallel universe.
Right? And I feel like, especially when you watch someone who has said some things that are very problematic and very offensive, I can imagine you wishing for a parallel universe and not just wishing it, but making it happen.
Well, we actually want to know what you think of Diego and his way of kind of standing up to Donald. Now, you can email us at nowor.never@cbc.ca, or you can chat with us on our Facebook page. You can find us under CBC Now or Never.
But look it up now.
Not never.
Or you'll never do it.
You're listening to the very first episode ever of Now or Never. I'm Trevor Dineen.
And I am still Chiwetelu. And we've been talking a lot about bullying, and it's really clear to me that it's a big issue for a lot of people. And bullying in schools is especially its own unique problem. But you know, Trevor, there are people in Canada who are committed to finding new and innovative ways of dealing with this. And this week, I was fortunate enough to meet two of them. The first is Constable Derek Onesco, and he's a school resource officer at Queen Elizabeth High School in Edmonton, Alberta.
In the city of Edmonton, we have a bullying bylaw. It's under Section 8 of the Public Places bylaw. This bylaw was enacted in 2003.
So basically, what this school cop is reciting to us is the fact that the city of Edmonton has actually outlawed schoolyard bullying. And they're the first city in the entire of Canada to do it.
I think it's amazing because I remember back in the 80s, there was a small town in Georgia where they tried to outlaw dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't go over as well, but I think this is a much bigger, grander, better use of outlawing.
I just realized that you're talking about Footloose.
Mm-hmm.
That totally missed me. So this bylaw specifically targets schools, those under 18 who are being bullied in a public space. A police officer can issue you a ticket and actually make you pay up for it.
Usually when I'm dealing with a bullying issue and I bring up the bullying bylaw to kids, they were unaware of the consequences with respect to that bylaw. So it's quite often you see their eyes open wide when they hear that they could be charged and fined $250 if they're not abiding by the law.
See, so when I listen to that clip, I kind of think to myself, is this actually lowering incidents of bullying in these schools?
You know, I thought the same thing. And what Constable Onesco says is that just the threat of the bylaw itself is enough that it's sort of reducing it.
It's a great tool we have in our toolbox. I think over the past 6 years since I've been in the schools, there's been very few bullying bylaw tickets that I've personally written, but it's nice having that tool in our toolbox to use and a resource to ultimately speak to students and parents about as well.
And some of this is actually expanded now across Canada. Like Edmonton, their bylaw has inspired cities like Regina, Port Coquitlam, a few small towns in Alberta to sort of take a stand in terms of enacting a bylaw against bullying. So it's one approach.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a good first step. I think it's a nice way to kind of get the schools, the kids, the teachers more engaged in talking about bullying.
Yeah. I mean, it just legitimizes that it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But there is another approach, and I came across this from bullying expert Tony Volk. He teaches psychology at Brock University in St. Catharines, and he has this completely different approach to dealing with bullies. See, he says he spent a lot of time trying to figure out what is it that's making them tick.
I don't know. When I picture a bully, for some reason in my brain, is Biff Tannen. Do you know who that is?
No.
Biff Tannen was the character in Back to the Future. He was the bully that picked on Marty McFly, and he was just like rude, he was selfish, he was intimidating, and he would just walk around making people feel like garbage.
Yeah, I think a lot of those traits that you mentioned is how we typically think of bullies, just these sort of like imposing figures. But Professor Volk says that stereotype isn't actually true.
Most bullies aren't actually sadistic. They're not actually interested in causing hurt to other kids. They're just callously goal-oriented. They don't care more or less about kids' feelings than the average child. They're just more ruthless in being willing to get those goals. And the first isn't common in Western countries, even though the stereotype is, and that's bullying for resources. So the idea of bullying for lunch money. But you could also have bullying to be the captain of the football team or to get the spot in law school. But more commonly, we see bullying done for reputation and for power. And the data is now pretty clear that bullies may or may not be as well liked as other kids, but they are definitely viewed as dominant and socially powerful.
So basically what he's saying is that bullies are really driven by status. So Professor Volk thought instead of just trying to punish the bullies or trying to change their behavior, what if we found a way to give them that status that they're actually aiming for in a way that doesn't involve hurting other kids? And so he came up with this program called Meaningful Roles.
And what we do is we ask students and the teachers to get together and come up with jobs that students can do. And then the researchers pick the jobs that have a high level of social visibility. So one of the classic examples that we use is being a door greeter. As an adult, being the Walmart greeter is the highest status job. But for an adolescent, if you greet everybody who comes in, everybody gets to see you. Everybody has to say hi to you. For somebody who's arrogant and looking for attention, that's a really good way of meeting that need.
When I hear that, I don't really know if that would work as well as he presents it, because I can't picture a bully sitting there greeting everyone being like, oh, this fulfills that bullying need. He's
Right.
saying hi to everybody.
Right. I was skeptical too when I heard that, because it seems a little silly to have someone greeting you who is also terrorizing you.
Mhm.
But he's actually piloted this program in a school in Arizona, and here's what happened.
Incidents of violence and injuries and truancy and missed days drop dramatically, anywhere from 30 to 80%. It's a pilot study, and we don't have individual data, so we just measured it at the school level, what happens. But they realize that there's a pro-social way of getting what they want. And it's giving them real examples of how you can get that popularity. So they see that, wow, kids are really all saying hi. I'm getting the attention that I wanted, and I didn't have to hit anybody for it.
See, I don't know how that's going to work later on in life, though, because I can't picture someone like Donald Trump being given more power than he already has, and whether or not that's a good idea.
I thought the same thing, and I did ask Professor Volk about it.
If we're giving these bullies these prominent positions, are we actually going to make things worse in the long run by giving them more power, making them even more able to bully others? The early data says no, that doesn't happen at all. But that's something that we really want to track in the future to make sure that doesn't happen.
I'm really glad he qualified that it's the early data, because my instinct, not backed by any sort of science, is that this needs to be tested a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And he is looking for more opportunities to continue to test, because Professor Volk is currently applying for funding to get his program rolled out into schools across Canada, the Netherlands, and the United States.
Well, if you're listening right now and you're a parent and you've had to deal with your child being bullied in schools, and you've watched this kid come home and he just has that look on his face of someone who's been tormented all day long, and you think to yourself, you know, these approaches you've heard today, they're not going to work. Or maybe you think they will work. Or maybe you have a whole different approach that you think might be the best course of action for this. Shoot us an email at nowor never@cbc.ca and tell us your thoughts. But just try to remember, don't bully us when you do it.
Yeah, don't use that email to bully us. There's a personal email address for that, and that is trevor@nowornever@cbc.ca.
Yeah, wow, it's actually filling up fast.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's amazing how that's happening.
That is...
Those are mostly for me.
I'm going to turn my
So
phone